Hey guys, I'm Angel Williams, and my husband and I have been in residential for probably 20 years. We got into commercial multifamily, and we're actually doing a commercial residential purchase right now. We're probably doing due diligence next week in addition to Thanksgiving. We're looking at like a 10 property duplex set. So it's 20 units that we're buying with family. So that's going to be a completely different experience. I'll let you know how that one goes. um, Other than that, I am an economist by degree. I have my Master of Science in Economics and I have my BBA with an economics major. And so a lot of the things I'm looking at from a different kind of angle. um, the study of economics is not the study of money. It's the study of how people respond to incentives. And so once you start thinking about it that way, you can use it a little more universally than maybe you think you can. So with that, I'm going to start my slideshow. So discovering your superpowers and then partnering for your weaknesses. If you are just getting started, you may be looking at me and thinking I'm the stupidest person in the world because you have no more money. And I'll tell you, like, I got really lucky. My husband is an underwriter. He's got his doctorate in chemical engineering and he can run numbers like nobody's business. I'm an economist, yes, but like I said, it's not really the study of money. It's not the study of numbers. It's how people respond. It's a social science. So while I kind of remember numbers, I can't really do things with them. So numbers are really not my thing. So I got fortunate in that I my my partner handles my weaknesses when it comes to those things. So that was fortunate for me. I understand that you really can't do that. But at the same time, during that very short period of time where you're wearing all the hats, don't be afraid to start looking for partners that are not like you. We have a tendency to want to be around people that are like us. But if you surround yourself with people that are like you, y'all are going to have a great time, but nothing's going to get done. So make sure that you're partnering with people that are not like you and they've got your back when it comes to your weaknesses. So on the first slide here, it's, you are your superpowers. And so what I want you to do is just kind of take a moment, if you need to shut your eyes or put your hands over your ears and really get into your head and think about the things that make you you. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And it is a-okay to say, I have weaknesses. Having weaknesses does not make you weak. It just lets you know what you need to be searching for in a partner to be able to cancel that out or be able to negate it, to be able to be the strength that you need in that partnership. So on who are you really, this can be really tough for a lot of people, and it's male and female. Are you only your appearances? I'm 47. Yes, I still have blue and purple hair, but I'm getting older and I'm getting bigger. And my doctor says, oh, as you get older, you gain weight. I'm pretty sure it's hormonal. I am going to the doctor and we are going to figure this out because there is zero reason for this to be happening. But just as women look in the mirror and they equate who they are with how they look, men do too. So this is universal. Women just tend to be a little more vocal about it to their friends. Do you let other people see who you actually really are on the inside? Or do you hate it? Do you hide it? Do you put a facade up? Do you hate it so much that you're unwilling to share it because you think people are not going to like you because of it? Are you afraid of what others are going to think of you? Are you afraid that they're going to see the real you and be like, ugh, yeah, I don't want you in my circle. And just kind of a quick aside on that, people self-selecting away from you is actually an amazing thing because you quit wasting your time on people that are never going to say yes to you. So let those fools self-select away and focus on your tribe. When you're looking at these questions and you're answering them, is it because it's truly your reality or because it's what you wish your reality would be? And that's okay too. Maybe you're thinking of it as, what would the person that I want to be do? And it's a quote my husband has on our mirror, what would the person I want to be do? And maybe you're answering in that perspective. And again, these answers aren't right or wrong. They're just your answers. And then at the bottom, this is kind of that, what I was just talking about, are you answering the questions no because it's actually true or because it is the future version of you, or it's because it's what you really want it to be? Just kind of keeping those things in perspective there. When you're trying to figure out what your strengths are. There are a ton of tools out there. You've got DISC, you've got predictive indexes, Myers-Briggs. Clifton was one I hadn't heard of, and I actually have a friend of mine's results from her company. If we have time, we'll dig into it. If we don't, we'll skip it. I'm about to absolutely feed you a ton of information like it's coming out of a fire hose. So hang on tight because once we hit the econ piece of it and some of the math and the graph, you're going to be like, oh my God, because it just makes so much sense. Positive intelligence is there at the bottom. It's actually my favorite because it gives you insight into the voices in your head. So, and when we get there, I'll kind of explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. Oh, yikes. Okay. Did I miss one? No. Okay. So on DISC, this is where I say I got really, really fortunate because my husband and I are total opposites. I'm high I, high D. He is high C, high S. So the people that I can't reach, he usually can. We've syndicated 2 deals. We were the lead sponsors on both deals, or we are the lead sponsors. We raised $1 million for each deal. And he was equally as effective as me, even though I'm the one that is in charge of all the relationships. Because as an introvert, it's not that he can't have relationships. It's that he's not going to talk to everybody in the room. He's going to talk to 2 or 3 people, and it's going to be people he feels comfortable around. But where I may not be able to reach those people and really get them on my team, get them in my tribe, getting them to love us and trust us, he can. So you really need to make sure that you're covering all of these pieces if you're wanting to have a good investor base, strong investor relations, strong friendships. Because it's those relationships and friendships that really carry you and catapult you when you're trying to grow. So I tend to really not hit the transactional side of things, because when I'm thinking transactional and I'm on the grind, I'm doing the business, my growth is really linear because it's dependent on how hard I grind. But when I'm focusing on the relationships, it's a slow roll at first, but then you take off. You've got that exponential growth because your growth comes from the friendships and the relationships that you've built. So kind of keep those things in mind there. With Myers-Briggs, this is that one with all the letters and it tells you all the things. My husband, I think, is ENFP, and I think I'm ISTJ. So we're he's INFP and I'm ESTJ because I'm the extrovert, he's the introvert. And so this gives you a little bit of insight too into how you make decisions. What is your analytical brain like? It's kind of similar to if you've taken one of those colors tests, where you're green or gold or blue. I was the first time I took it, I was a K-5 music teacher. And I kept wondering year after year, why are all these teachers crying at the end of the year? This is insane. They're very, very blue. Blues are touchy-feely. They're in their feels. I am not blue. I'm actually very green. I think it was green. So I'm just not that way. I'm pretty logical and probably more analytical than a lot of people that are extroverted. So I was just like, hey, bye. Have a great summer. See you next year. Because I wasn't that blue kind of personality. And then I was orange, which was the party person, which is just hilarious on a different level. My husband was also green, but then he was gold. He's a rules follower. So when you think about those things and you're looking at that, you're like, how do those work together? Because like I said, my husband and I are really opposite personality wise. And with our education, he's an engineer, I'm an economist, and we're just very different. He's super numbers oriented. He needs to see it. Needs to be black and white. Whereas I'm over here in that social science doing the gray area dance. So you need all those pieces. It's all of those pieces that go together that help you grow. Predictive index is another test that's out there. And I've got most of the links on here. I can share the presentation later if y'all want it. I'm not afraid to do that. So I know some people won't share, but I'm not worried about it. Clifton Strengths is the one that I just heard about a couple of years ago. And this one looks at tons of things. So my friend sent me the results from her company. And these were the results. These are her actual workers. And she had them do this so that she could see where they had weaknesses. and who they needed to bring on their team. So if you look at like executing, they've got somebody in all of these columns except for like focus. But sometimes there can be some crossover, and maybe if two people are teaming up, or you're doing a double on the body, like if you're like somebody that's ADHD and you have to bring somebody in to get things done, that's called a double. Maybe that's all they need, and somebody can take on that. When you go over to influencing, they got some empty columns here, so they know what they need to feed. They know what they need to fill. The relationship building, they're pretty covered. And so it's kind of funny because this is a friend of mine, and most of my friends are very heavy on the relationship side of things. So it's just kind of a little bit of fun there. And then on the strategic thinking, they pretty much got all of this covered too. So this one is not free, but it is a very good one if you've got a lot of people on your team and you want to see what's going on. Where are the quirks? Why is this not working the way I thought it was going to work? Maybe you're working because you're grinding, but you feel like it should be a little easier. So this is a really strong test for people that have a large team that maybe you're just not quite syncing up yet. So, all right. Positive intelligence is my absolute favorite. And the reason why I like this is because I am that person that will absolutely kick myself while I'm down. And when I took the test, I was like 9 point something on hyperachiever. And you may be thinking, well, that's great. You're type A. I'm absolutely not type A. What hyperachiever means is that I get my value, my self-worth from what other people see me doing for others. That was why I was the treasurer of my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 15. I was the treasurer of her elementary's PTO for 7 years. It's a 2-year term. 1 year, I didn't even have a kid there. Okay. I don't say no. I was the troop coordinator for my kids' AHG troop for 7 years. I was, I was doing this, I was doing that, I was running these things, I was doing all this stuff because my self-worth is not within me. It's in what I'm doing for other people and how others view what I'm doing for other people. So hyperachiever is like hearing that and knowing how I came out on that test, game changer. I'm also restless and a controller. And those mean that like I always have to be doing something. So I can't say no, and I always have to be doing something. And with the controller piece of it, for me, if something doesn't fit perfect, I lose it. And I lose it bad. Days, weeks, maybe even a month where I'm just beating myself up. And what this book does is it tells you, hey, that's your saboteur talking. That's not you. You don't treat yourself this way. So when you hear all those voices and you're down and you're getting kicked and you're getting pummeled, you can stop and say, wait a second, this isn't me. I'm not this total jerk to myself. And it allows you to just let those thoughts pass through and be just thoughts. And my controller and restless, I think they were both like 6.1, and my hyperachiever, I think it was 9.1 or 8.1 or 8.3. So, I mean, they were really high. I don't remember what my husband came out with on this, but he's kind of a people pleaser. He avoids some, and he's hyper rational. I know it was something around there. But one of the things we realized is, and I think it came from having a special needs son, we picked up some victim. And it's okay to feel victimized, but it is not okay to feel like you are a victim. So if you need a few moments to feel like something has happened to you, that's one thing. But you absolutely do not want to consider yourself a victim, like all these things are happening to you relentlessly all the time because it just happens to you. So if you've ever heard someone say, I have to do this, or they say, oh, wait, I get to do this, that's part of turning around some of that victim mentality. So just a little side note there. Oh, all right. So this was something that our coach did for us. And he said, okay, you're going to send out these 2 questions to 5 people and let me know what they say. I sent it out to 10 because I was like, 50% of the people don't respond. And he wants a trend. He wants to see the trend. So I sent it out to 10, and it's, what is my unique capability? What is something I do naturally better than most people? I was like, whatever. I'm never going to get anything back on this. 7 people said, I will talk to anybody. I will build an instant relationship. And half the time that person is doing something for me by the end of the day. And I was like, what? That's not a superpower. I can talk to people because I'm not an engineer. I mean, that was my first thought as I was like, no, that's not a superpower. But it really turned out that it is. And once I really embraced the fact that that's my superpower, it's gotten better. And my memory was pretty good. It's gotten better. There's things that noticing relationships and people, and if you've ever seen any of Robert Cialdini's stuff with the powers of persuasion, I started realizing that I was utilizing a lot of that and not even knowing it. So sticking to finding your superpowers and then really developing them, you think it's not going to get better, but it just continually does. And it's pretty amazing once you realize it. So once you've got all your results together, you've got all your emails, you've got all of your tests, really, really think about it and run it by some people that know you. Family, friends, say, hey, is this really something true about me? Because most of them are going to tell you, if they are truly your friends and family, they are honest with you. Hell, ask your brother or sister, because they will say anything to you if they think it's going to hurt you. That's what big brothers, big sisters will. I mean, we all do it, right? So if you're really wanting to see, run it by those people that you know are going to be honest with you, because it's really earth shattering and eye opening once you really know what those superpowers are and you're able to continue developing them. I talked about this a little bit at the very beginning. Embrace your weaknesses. Don't be afraid of them. Having weaknesses does not make you weak. It just means that you've identified where you need partners to do some CYA. You've identified those places where you know you suck. And it's okay. It just means you got to find a partner that doesn't suck in that area, that can carry that weakness and make it super powerful and make it powerful for the whole team. So don't be afraid of those. Embrace them. In the example, I said, I'm not an underwriter. Could I underwrite? I've tried. Like waves of nausea came over me after I realized that I had just spent like 18 hours looking at this document and hadn't even opened the Excel files. It sucks. It is not my thing. And it's so known amongst our investors that they'll call and be like, hey, Angel, tell me about this. Oh, wait, can I talk to Jason? I know you don't know numbers. The first time it happened, it was like a sucker punch, like a knife to the gut. And I was like, wait a second. This is what I want. I don't want to be known as the person that you can go to answer questions about numbers. And so you also need to be prepared for that. Be prepared for when people know that this is your weakness and don't even waste your time trying to ask you the question. It's going to sting a little at first, but once you embrace it and just pull it in, it is not even a thing. It makes it super easy. All right, asking for help. You've accepted, you've embraced. Now you got to ask for help. And asking for help is like the psychological piece that messes with so many people, because you think, man, I got to ask for help. I'm going to look so weak. But asking for help is like the absolute opposite of that. Oh, asking for help makes you strong. It also gives you this level of persuasion. If y'all have ever read anything by Brendon Burchard, what's the name of the book? Oh, I don't see it on my shelf. But in this book, he talks about how when you want to gain some power or persuasion over someone, you ask them for help. Because other people see it as an opportunity to help you. And you went to them. You stroked their ego because they're the expert that can help you. So accept it and ask for help. It's not a bad thing. When I look at our teams, holy night. When I look at our teams, it's not just us in any of these things. When we got into multifamily, it was me and my husband, Jason. We have an operating team of other LPs. We've got investors. We use Julianne Peterson as our loan broker. JT Lynch is our insurance guy. Like, this team makes it possible for us to syndicate deals. When I'm putting out podcasts or trying to do YouTube stuff, don't go to my YouTube. It hasn't been updated in a really long time. But when I'm doing these things, I'm not going to sit there and try and do it on my own. I do record to the cloud sometimes because I get lots of different ways that it's recorded. But my podcast doesn't even use the visual. It only uses the audio. But by having it in lots of different files, it makes it easier for our VAs also. So if you look at like our production teams for the YouTube channel and for the podcast, It's me and my husband. It's our VAs, Jessica and Danica. And then I use a company called Streamline for our podcast. I've been with them forever. We started doing podcasts in August of 2020, and I've been using Streamline the whole time. So don't ask me prices because I'm pretty sure we're grandfathered in somewhere because they are doing stellar things and we aren't paying stellar prices. So, and I mean stellar as in like outrageous. We are paying stellar prices as far as like what we can handle. On our residential and single family home team, we do have our own residential portfolio. That's generally me and my husband. We have an agent that we use here. A lot of times it can be very difficult to find an agent that is investor friendly. So make sure you ask those questions up front. And I know in commercial, hello, they're all investor friendly. But if you're ever doing anything residential, you want them to know that you are not going to be the end user. This thing is not going to be owner occupied. We need someone that's going to be friendly to us, knowing that we plan on investing and we're not going to owner occupy those properties. And then we have a property manager. We have a couple of different guys because we have residential properties in a few different cities. And then we have a commercial banker that's a good friend of ours. He's actually invested in one of our multifamily syndications. So you build these friendships, right? And this is why I say relationships are just so important. On our residential multis, those are 2, 3, 4s. Jason actually has a general partnership that his family has. And so some of the quads and duplexes are in there. And so they have the voting family members on that team. And then they have their own property management company for that group of residential multis. And then, like I said earlier, we're looking at doing a residential multifamily purchase. It's 10 properties, all duplexes, so 20 units in total. It is a commercial purchase, which we're dealing with residential people. And so there's a little bit of confusion there because we kind of sit on all sides. But that's me and my husband, Jason. It's his sister, Sarah, and her husband, Alan, and then Jason's mom. The property management team we're going to be using is one called NWP. They are property managers and brokers. So those are our teams, though. And when you look here, we're not doing anything alone. Because once you get going and realize that you're not going to wear all the hats at 100% and you're not going to be the best at all the hats, you grow so much faster. That's why you hear people say, oh man, that first million is tough. After that, they fly. And it's because you come to that realization of, I can't do this on my own. And then further, I don't want to do this on my own. I know that having a team is better. And that's where you really got to be able to know your strengths and your weaknesses so you can find those partners. Now, this is where it's going to get econ-y. So I looked at, David Ricardo has this model of exchange and trade, and he comes up with comparative advantage where he's showing like even when you're dealing with countries and one country outproduces this other country on every front with every good, you can still trade and find benefit. And so I used that and I put it on what I call a team stack, and I'm going to actually show you mathematically and graphically why you don't want to work on your weaknesses. Even though people tell you all the time, what's one weakness you commit to working on this year? None. Because I'm going to show you where it's going to put you on your production's possibility frontier. Well, that's the econ term. We call it something different in here. But I'm going to show you where it puts you and why it is inefficient and ineffective. So we're going to do a little bit of vocab here. If you've heard of opportunity cost, you may think you understand it. But basically what opportunity cost is the next best thing you're giving up. So why is there no such thing as a free lunch? Well, I always thought it was because, of course, somebody has to pay for the ingredients. Somebody has to pay for it. And then one day, I think I was already teaching econ because I teach college econ too. And it just hit me and I was like, oh my God, no, there's no such thing as a free lunch because I still got to stand in that dang line. Or if I'm the first person there to beat the line, how long does it take for them to open that lunch or that cafeteria or that soup line? But all of that is opportunity cost. If you're in a deal that 1.1x is when it's supposed to 2.0, your opportunity cost is that 0.9 that you lost because you could have put it in another deal that did 2x. So those are your opportunity costs. They're not necessarily outlays, and they're not nominal. You don't see them, but you absolutely feel them. And once you kind of sit in that and realize that it's what you're giving up as the opportunity cost, it makes it a little easier to understand. And we're going to use that when we're figuring out like trading underwriting for networking. So I just want to have you know that. And then specialization, That's just where you take your superpower and you run with it and you specialize in it. And then you trade with your other team members in their specialized superpowers. So that's a little bit of vocabulary there. This is the basis of what I'm showing you. So in this team, there are 2 members, because if you start trying to do multiple members, you got all these axes, it gets crazy. I can still show it to you too. So you got Susan, that is amazing at cultivating relationships, and she's not bad at underwriting deals. If she were to take her entire day and cultivate relationships, she can cultivate 9 relationships. If she takes her entire day to underwrite deals, she can underwrite 6 deals. And then you got John. John's the introvert, and he likes numbers. He's better at numbers than he is with relationships. But if he spends his entire day cultivating relationships, he can only cultivate 2. If he spends his entire day underwriting deals, he can only underwrite 4 deals. So you look at this and you're like, wait a second. Susan is better than John at both of these. Why in the world would she ever put John on her team? But what you'll notice is there on the team line, I added it all together. So if Susan and John are on a team and they spend all of their time cultivating relationships, together they can cultivate 11 relationships. If they instead spend all of their time underwriting deals, they can together underwrite 10 deals. So this is where I said, at first look, you might say, oh, Susan's better than him at both things. She should never put him on her team. But by utilizing this principle of comparative advantage, which is where the opportunity cost comes in, we're going to graphically and mathematically prove that you absolutely 100% need to be working in your superpowers and not your weaknesses. If we set up the numbers, I do it in ratios here. On the deals side of things, what you see, that's underwriting deals. Susan has a 9 to 6 relationship. So for every 1 relationship, you divide both of the sides by 9. And you see that you wind up here with you've got the one relationship cost her 2/3 of a deal. And then if you look at the deals to relationship side of things, you see that for every 1 underwritten deal, she's going to give up 1.5 cultivated relationships. And then for John, we see the same thing. We have the relationships to deal ratio there. So for every 1 relationship, he gives up 2 underwritten deals. For every underwritten deal, he loses 1/2 of a cultivated relationship. This is opportunity cost. So when we look at this, we see that for relationships, somebody can lose 2/3 of a deal, or somebody can lose 2 deals. It's more expensive for John to work on relationships than it is for Susan. So Susan should specialize in relationships. When we look at deals, Susan gives up 1.5 deals for a relationship, whereas John gives up 1/2 of a relationship for a deal. So who has the better cost when it comes to deals? John. He only gives up 1/2 a relationship. For every deal that Susan underwrites, she gives up cultivating almost 2 relationships, right? If you were rounding, it'd be 2. It's a relationship and a half. So that's the opportunity cost. It's the cost that you're giving up in terms of the other good. So, and we only have one best option with this. And here I just explained it a little bit more. This is the mathematical representation of it, or the graphical. So as we said before, if Susan and John spend all of their time cultivating relationships, they can cultivate 11, and that's where the purple line is. If they spend all of their time doing deals, they can do 10 deals. So that purple line there is the team's production possibilities. The blue line is Susan's production possibilities, and the red line was John's. So what we do is we say, okay, let's focus on the superpowers. If we know that John's superpower is writing deals and he spends all of his time on deals, he can do 4. And if Susan specializes in relationships and she spends all of her time in relationships, she can cultivate 9. So that's the top point, where he is 4, she is 9, and that's the X and the Y, because we put underwriting on the X and the relationships on the Y. So that's your first point. If all they did was focus on the weaknesses, so if Susan says, you know what, this is my year, I'm going to work on underwriting, she can only do the 2 down there, or the 6 down there. And if John says, you know what, dang it, this year I'm going to work on relationships, I'm going to spend every single day working on relationships, we know that if he spends his whole day in relationships, he only gets the 2, right? So that's the bottom point. Now, this is where you kind of need to also understand what the production's possibility means. You want to be on or outside of the production's possibility curve there, because along that curve are all of your efficient and effective points production. That's where your average team is going to be. Your average team that has all the right players is going to be on that line right there, because they don't understand this. If you're working on your weaknesses, you're way down there. You are inside that curve. That is ineffective, inefficient. You do not want to be inside of that curve. If you have a supervisor or you're on a team that requires you to spend some time working on weaknesses, the only place that you really need to be there is at the top of that curve. So I put a midpoint on there, and then the top point there was 4 and 9. So along that line, the worst thing that could happen is you go to that point where you're just like every other team out there. But I would not work on weaknesses ever beyond that, because then you're going to become ineffective and inefficient. You'll be inside the curve, and you want to do whatever you can to be outside of that curve. So if we put it all together, we had think, embrace, accept, and measure. And those are the things, that create the team. So that's kind of how we put it all together. My husband actually came up with the idea of the puzzle, and I really loved it. So he really did a lot of this for me, and he's amazing for that. And then this is kind of all of our stuff. Our Instagram stinks. I wouldn't go to it, but it's on the slide. And then we've got our website, my email, Calendly, if you want to hop on a discovery call. My LinkedIn's on there. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. We do have our podcasts, and then I'm the Rebel Real Estate Investor on TikTok. I don't post much. I think I posted one thing, but I'm kind of addicted to it. I'm always on it. So that's all the stuff for me.